to go ahead and get started with some things. So we're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming today and being here for this presentation about the Homeless Coalition. Before we get started with that, just wanted to do a few announcements. First of all, thank you to Reach for providing the food and the space today. Thank you to Jeannie for helping to put this program together. And so announcements that we have, Interfaith Progressive Dinner. If you didn't grab a flyer when you came in, there's flyers out front for this. It is a really fun time. If you have an opportunity to join us for this, it's just what it says, a progressive dinner. We're going to move from place to place and sample different foods from different traditions and learn about the different faith traditions along the way. So it's starting at Kifer Mennonite Church on the north end of town for breads and spreads, Mennonite style. And at the same location, we'll have Honorable Ten Bickle, our resident Buddhist monk, will be doing a Japanese noodle slide where you can catch noodles with your chopsticks. It's a lot of fun. So we'll go from there to Congregation of Abraham. All right, nice to hear representing. Rabbi Mark was unable to come today. He's not well. But they'll provide a traditional Jewish food, and you'll learn about the synagogue. And then we'll move from there to the Islamic Society of Western Maryland's Mosque at O'Day Road for dessert, which is always a lovely time, and the hospitality is wonderful. And you'll learn a little bit about Islam that you might not know.
So sorry.
So the deadline for tickets for reservations is this Friday. So if you're interested in going, please do sign up soon. Let's see, the next HARC meeting, we need a location for that. So see me after the meeting if you are willing to host that one or one of the upcoming ones. Oh, we have a host. Oh, Dion. All right, great. And we tentatively we have Rising to Learn is going to present at that meeting. Yeah, which is it's so perfect that you're going to be hosting that, Dion. So Rising to Learn, if you haven't heard about them, go to risingtolearn.com. And their goal is to raise community awareness and understanding of the work of the Washington County Board of Education and Washington County Public Schools, while encouraging community participation in shaping the future of the schools. So you'll learn more about that next time. And one last announcement that I have is that you may have noticed in the weekly news flash that we're looking for our member congregations and affiliates to submit information to us for a member spotlight that we're going to be doing at least once a month in the news flash. So we want to know about anything new in your house of worship, anything new in your organization, what the community should know about you. Just kind of share highlights to your own horn, and let others know about yourself. So information has come out in the news flash for that, and we'll be again this week. And we will be sending an email with information as well. It's also on the website. Anybody else have any very quick announcements? I saw Rich put information on the tables. Thank you for your visitations at the hospital. Anybody else have any brief announcements? There's also materials up here that if you didn't get it, you can. Yeah, Marla.
That they need transportation volunteer.
Oh, okay. Meritus Hospital is looking for volunteers to give
Hematology and oncology.
Okay, hematology and oncology. Volunteers to give patients rides to appointments, not locally, because CAC does that and others do that, but to, let's say they have a treatment in Baltimore, or there's somebody currently who lives in Martinsburg, West Virginia, but needs to get to John Marsh Cancer Center and needs rides 5 days a week for 6 weeks. So they're looking for a rotation of volunteers, and there's other needs that keep popping up. So if anybody's interested, or if you want to announce that in your congregation, the contact information will be going out again in this week's newsflash. Okay, I don't want to delay any longer, so I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie and Tim and Kelli, and so delighted to have all three of you here. Jeannie is my good friend who is the executive director of REACH, and Tim Fisher, my friend Tim Fisher, is the CEO of Community Action Council, and Kelli Black, my new friend who I just met, is with the Washington County Mental Health Authority. Thank you. I'm sorry, this is kind of, I think you have to hold it up close.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's this? Can you hear me? I just need my visual aid because I get excited. So how many of you are aware that our county has a local homeless coalition? Is that new to anyone here? Great. So we have a local homeless coalition that is made up of the shelter providers, mental health providers, HPD, the school system, houses of faith, that all come together to help serve those in need. And we focus on the homeless and prevention of homeless together. So one of the things I like to highlight is the collaboration that takes place every day. Actually, literally right now, we have a monthly coordinated entry meeting where we have a coordinated entry list, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We go by, we have a list by vulnerability. So if the person at the top of the list is a single male and there's an opening in permanent supportive housing or in the COC housing, they will get that housing placement. If the housing placement open is a female, we might go all the way down to 5th or 6th. So it is a coordinated effort to help house the homeless. Currently, right now, that list has 284 people on it. Now, I share that because, and you'll see the packet. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on data because we have so much I want you to at least know about. But last year, we served 712 people off that list collaboratively. I don't know all the data, but I know CAC housed or kept housed over 300. I know our case management did 73. So this is a continuous effort. So when you see someone's homeless, the first thing you need to refer them to the entry points. The entry points are CAC, they're the lead agency. HGI, Horizon Goodwill, they have Housing Navigator and they're the youth shelter. Potomac Community Services that has case management and homeless outreach, and of course REACH. So, this person needs shelter, you get them to a shelter. We have 6 shelters in our county. Is there enough shelters or enough anything? No. But this is a moving cycle. As the end of June, so St. John's Family Shelter, they have 5 units. At the end of June, they had permanently placed 10 families from those 5 units by the end of June, January to June. This is a continuous effort that happens through the different shelters. The shelters that don't have case management, like our amazing, awesome Jill, they will refer. So the Rescue Mission, the Salvation Army, they will refer to our case management. So this happens continuously. I share this because, constantly, what about this family? Are they on the coordinated entry list? So there's 284 people, and it's hard, but the family you're talking to is the same faces that our team talks to every day. So this is our effort to collaboratively place people from homelessness, from shelters into housing. So I want you to know about that. These are our guides. I take these everywhere I go. It's designed to slip in your, fold in half, slip in your back pocket. Right at the top, most basic needs, the shelters by type. So if someone says, there's only one shelter and they're seasonal, that's my favorite. Actually, did you know there are 6 shelters in the county and 5 of them are year-round, and because of that, they have time limits. So it might be 30 days in and out, it might be 90. Each shelter has special things that work for their program. REACH's shelter is the only cold weather, low barrier shelter, so that is seasonal, but we keep as many people alive as possible in the winter. So anyway, let's move it further down, meals and soup kitchens. HARC, for those of you that are aware, HARC has every clothing bank, food bank, and soup kitchen in the county. What day are they open? Where's the address? Where do you go? We constantly keep these updated. If money is tight, if someone is homeless, or that tire glue, that's an Alice family, give them these resources because these can help. All right, let me see, I did the guides. Okay, so coordinated entry. I would love to tell you more about that, but I want to make sure you get to hear about all the wonderful things that we do.
Katie, can you hold the mic
Yes.
closer?
Thank you. Do you want me to start over? One thing I want to tell you is, if you can have these, I scanned more because the copier did me dirty, and half of them are black and white. On that coordinated entry list, 284 currently right now, and that's a moving thing. Thank you, Ashley. 51% on that list are women. 31% are have a mental health challenge, and 21% are escaping domestic violence. So I share that because when we get to the ordinance later and the face of what people were thinking was the face of homelessness, they call it the shenanigans on prospect. That is not the face of homelessness, but because they're out there, people assume they're homeless, they're not, and what they're doing, and that's actually not the face of homelessness. So another stat is, I don't have it in front of me, but about a third are elderly. So I just want you to know that. So we have our coordinated entry numbers. There's other data in here, including shelter beds, so you're welcome to look at this. But the thing I'm really proud of is our collaborative efforts. 40% of those that go through this coordinated entry system, shelters, homeless in their car, shelter, 40% get placed into permanent housing. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that is above the state average. What about returns to homelessness? We have a 7% in Washington County return to homelessness. 7%. So, and again, you gotta remember free will. I'm glad I have it, but that is the most frustrating thing we deal with. And so sometimes no matter what you do, right? No matter what you do, if they're not ready for change, we've seen them placed in housing. You have two rules: housing first, permanent supported housing. Don't do drugs in the building, and your visitors have to leave at 11 p.m. We see people every day that violate those rules that are in place for safety. All right, so free will. All right, so at this time, yes,
When
ma'am,
you
sir.
turn your head away from the microphone, you're doing this. You gotta follow.
Thank you, Richard. Does anybody need me to repeat anything? Okay, all of it, got it. So, yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. With the housing first, my understanding is that the way it's run in other places is that they don't actually put restrictions. Is this different from the way it's run in other places? That the philosophy is that nothing can happen until people have a permanent house, and so they don't actually attach conditions to it, but they do come in with wraparound services.
Yes. So we do a housing first in Washington County, but in Maryland and Washington County. But the thing is, housing first isn't anarchy and free for all, right? So you can't start a fire in a building in any program because of the safety issues. So each program, while we are housing first, but there are rules to live in society for the safety of the other individuals. But yes, we do follow a housing first. There was an organization that tried to do literally housing first, put you in a room and you live there for 1 year. That was not successful. But we do have wraparound services. We have amazing collaboration. Our members of my team work with CEC and Kelly's team literally every day. Salvation Army, the Rescue Mission. So that collaboration happens every day. I'm just trying to be mindful of the time, but I would love to tell you more about that. Thank you. All right, so Tim, do you want to share about some HSP and
Sure.
aid agency?
So before we go any further, there's probably a couple recognitions we should do. Did everyone love the food?
Yeah.
Can we give it up for the folks who did the food? Amazing. And also we have our esteemed mayor and chief of police with us this afternoon. Can we welcome him with us? We're glad to have you guys here. Yeah, no, good. So my name is Tim Fisher. I am the CEO of the Community Action Council. I'm going to stay seated. I just came from a funeral where I laid to rest a man who was like a second father to me. So I've been crying all morning, so I'm a little tired. And it's so great to be here with you guys and see so many familiar and friendly faces, either friends that I've already made or will make. And so it's great to be here with you. In addition to being the CEO, I'm also a pastor. I've been a pastor here in Washington County for 30 years. I've pastored Covenant Life Church out on the Highway. So this room and the work that we do together is incredibly important to me and to us, right? So to talk a little bit about community action and our role, let me just give you a brief introduction of community action. So how many of you are familiar or have heard of the Community Action Council in Washington County? Okay, wonderful. Does anybody know how many community action agencies there are in the United States? Almost 1,100. So community action, I think sometimes in Washington County, the misnomer is that we're like a mom and pop, and nothing wrong with that, but a small nonprofit. We're not. There's almost 1,100 community action agencies across the U.S. We serve 99% of all of the counties in the United States. We were born out of the 1964 Economic Opportunity Act with President Johnson, and we are the federally mandated, at least still right now, we are the federally mandated, state-designated anti-poverty agency for the county or municipality that we find ourselves in. So Community Action is the anti-poverty agency for Washington County. So that doesn't make us any better than anyone, but it does make us a little bit unique in that oftentimes when there are state initiatives, Community Action is the lead of those initiatives when it comes to anti-poverty. So in our space and what we're talking about today, homelessness, we are the state-appointed lead for the HSP program, which is the Homeless Solutions Program. That does not mean that all of it rests on us, but it does mean that we are the lead agency for that program and for that grant. And so what we do is we not only do we participate in that grant, but we help administer that grant to sub-grantees like REACH, like Goodwill for their youth shelter, like Potomac Community Services for permanent supportive housing. I will say, and I know our esteemed mayor takes a lot of heat for a lot of things, and I know so does Chief Kifer. It's easy to think by what we see or by what we hear. And we know as people of faith, we don't always walk by what we see. But it's easy to see or to think because of what we see or what we hear that there is very little being done in the space of homelessness, especially in the city. But I can tell you that community action, just by ourselves, not even including our other partner organizations, last year housed or kept housed 309 folks, mostly in the city. 309 folks, mostly in the city. So I think that's do you guys think that's a pretty big number? Yeah, I think that's a pretty big number. We have a great team at CAC, and there are all kinds of nuances, right? So whenever there is federal money or state money, there are nuances to those dollars. The wonderful lady back here asked something about housing first, correct? And so you're right. Maryland has a housing first paradigm, which is to say the money that comes from the state, there are not conditions on it. So for example, and Jeannie mentioned a little bit ago, the vulnerability matrix. So if someone comes into community action, they are looking to access HSP dollars in what we call primarily rapid rehousing. So the rapid rehousing program folded into HSP are for folks who are currently homeless. That matters because the grant itself is governed by HUD guidelines on the definition of what homeless is. For example, if you are 25 years old and you are staying in a hotel being paid for by your uncle who lives in Arizona, HUD says you are not homeless. Although if you are 23 years old, living in a hotel being paid for by your uncle, you can be considered homeless. So it's very nuanced. Over 25, in order to be considered homeless or in order to be eligible for the program, You must be, at the moment that you come in to the agency, you must be either living on the street, living in a car, or at a shelter. Or there is some flexibility if you are at a hotel being paid for by a nonprofit. It just can't be a family member, it can't be like a for-profit organization. I know that all sounds very confusing, right? It took me a little bit to get accustomed to it myself. So it is quite nuanced in terms of who is eligible and who applies. That is not of our making. I know sometimes folks get the impression like that we make the rules, right? But those rules are actually passed on to us from the federal government and from our state officials that we receive funding from. And so I just want to encourage you with a couple things, and I'm happy to pass the mic to Kelli or to take questions or however we're doing that. There's a lot of work being done in this space. And so when it comes to Housing First, let me circle back around for that. For example, if there is a mom who comes in with a few children or a child, that vulnerability is going to be placed higher in the list than a single male, for example. Housing First means we don't discriminate, we don't push someone out of the program or push out eligibility if they're in active addiction. We don't push them out for any other reason. That Housing First means that the state believes, again, I know it's easy to put that on us, but that the state believes that the most important thing is to be housed. And so when you also consider that vulnerability matrix and folks with children rise to the top of that vulnerability matrix, I think it's important to remember that there is a tremendous focus on the children. That regardless of what behavior or addiction that parents may be involved in, Maryland says, top of the list, we're not going to discriminate based on active addiction or history or anything like that, that we are going to endeavor to house those folks based on their vulnerability and bring wraparound services to them in order to help facilitate not only upward social mobility, but greater health and well-being in their lives as well. So, to sum up, there are a lot of good things happening. It can be complicated, but we are always here to explain. And so I would be encouraged, and I think I can probably say this in this room, right? The harvest is great, the laborers are few, the need is great, the funds are few. But as we continue to work together, we have made great progress in this area, and we will continue to make great progress, I think, in Hagerstown and abroad in Washington County. And with that, I will pass it to my esteemed colleague.
I will stand up. And first of all, that was a miracle that we got him finished that fast. So, well done. Well done, everyone.
I'm tired.
First of all, I am from the Mental Health Authority, and at the Mental Health Authority, we receive funding from the state, and that funding is for grants, and Tim spoke of a couple. Sorry, I just did the same thing. Sorry. But one of our grants that I am in charge of is the Continuum of Care grant, and that is for homeless individuals, and again, they have to meet what Tim said was HUD's definition of homelessness, who have a mental health diagnosis. Now, they also have to have a very specific, there's several that they can have, but it's not just any type of mental health diagnosis, it's specific, usually schizophrenia or bipolar, one of those. But this program, this grant, this COC program was designed originally for those that were incarcerated and they were leaving incarceration and they had mental health illness. We still can do that, but mainly it's for, we have so many homeless now that we've branched out into doing more of that. However, I currently have 17 people in my program with space for 19. And when I first started 4 years ago with this program, there was space for 25. So my funding has drastically reduced. And part of that, though, that I'm really hoping for is that I can show a need. Last year, I really struggled to get applicants, and so I'm really trying to get the word out there, so that we can have more on my wait list, that I can say, I really need more funding. But right now I have 17, and some of them have been in my program for decades. I have a couple that have been in there for decades. And the goal is for them to be able to get out of the program. However, when you have a serious mental illness like that, sometimes that's just impossible. So it's a really great program. We pay up to 2/3 of their rent, and they have 2 requirements, which is to have case management twice a month. So someone is there with them, helping them out, and then every year they have an inspection of their house to make sure things are as they should be. It's a great program, I really love it. Let's see. I also have another grant. Now this grant is one for you guys to know about. It is called the Consumer Support Fund Grant. And what that is, well, let me list. It's for adults in Washington County. I do have a lot of calls about this, and unfortunately it's not for children, it's only for adults, but they have to be being treated for a mental health illness. So it can't just be for anyone, unfortunately, because we're the mental health authority. So it has to be a mental health illness, but we help with a lot of security deposits, rent arrears, first month's rent, people that are behind on a utility. So the things we can help with too are also clothing and housing needs and prescriptions, but we can't help with dental. We get a lot of requests for that. Dental, legal fees, application fees, cell phones, or prescription co-pays. I get a lot of requests for that. The checks are made payable directly to the vendors and not the individuals themselves, and it's a last resort grant, so they really need to reach out to you. So there's a lot of times that maybe you've gotten a call about this. I know St. Vincent de Paul is a big helper for me, St. Mark's also. So if you receive a call from a case manager saying, would your church be able to give $100, and then they come to me too, and they say, we've been to St. Mark's, we've been to St. Anne's, we've been to Reach, and now they're coming to us as a last resort. And we can usually give up to $1,000. We try to broadcast $750 because we want to help as many people as we can, but we can give up to $1,000 to help. And I mean, that's usually such a great thing. I mean, a lot of these people, rent arrears is a big thing. A lot of the people on the housing list, they can't, one of their things that they stumble upon is that they owe a previous landlord. So that's a biggie that we can help with. So we are trying to get that out as well. I did want to say, I was just in a meeting downstairs, and I found out that the fair market rent is gonna go down October 1st, which is crazy when rents are going up. So for example, I don't know the actual numbers, because I was just told this, but for example, right now, a fair market rent for a 1-bedroom in Hagerstown is $947.
Good luck.
Yeah. So it's gonna go down from that. So they're gonna say that a fair market rent is maybe $940, $945, which is crazy. For my CFC program that I spoke about first, I have to prove rent reasonableness, and so I have to look at 3 other places when I'm placing a person in an apartment, and all of them are $1,100 for a 1-bedroom. I mean, it's just insane that the state is saying that fair market rent is less than $947. That's just unheard of. I also wanted to give kudos to you all. At the Mental Health Authority, I get lots of calls every day, and most of our hardest people in crisis. And we don't see patients. As I said, we're just grant funded, and we provide funding to other providers in the area. But I definitely want to help these people. So the HARC list has been a godsend to me. Whoever organizes that and does that, that's wonderful. You guys have a wonderful list of what people in the area do, because there's so many people, so many providers in this area. I think you guys do know that, and there's just so many. On Thursday, we have our local homeless coalition meeting, and there's, all of you are welcome if you'd like to attend. It's something to see. It's a very big turnout. probably as many as this, like
Yes.
you said. Yeah, and from a lot of different people in the area, you can't see a person on the street in Smithsburg, sorry, that's where I live. You can't see a person on the street in Hagerstown and think that they don't have help. There's help. We just are all trying to work together and help them and give you all the knowledge so that you can spread it. All right, that's my piece.
So this is complicated, right? But you don't need to know everything that we know. Give a guide, send them to the 4 entry points. If you come across someone in need, send them to those 4 entry points. Give them the street guide. Maryland 211 is a wonderful resource. You can look all over the state. So with this, I wanted to share, this highlights just a small piece of the daily coordinated efforts that we have in Washington County. We realized about a year ago, there is a population that aren't yet homeless, they don't qualify for these nuances. They are working families in the public school system that can pay, they have employment, but because they have an eviction, they cannot find a landlord to rent to them. And understand, right, like landlords are, a lot of landlords here are local landlords, and if they don't get paid, they can't pay their mortgage or their insurance. But if you have a eviction on your record, it's very unlikely you're gonna find a landlord to rent to you. So then what do you do? So that is definitely a clog in this pipeline that we're talking about. So we got together, and what can we do as a coalition? So we created, using all of these SMART efforts, our coordinated effort, our permanent housing initiatives, our amazing case management wraparound. So we created Hope for Home. So these are families that can pay, they don't qualify for rapid rehousing, they have at least 1 child in the school system. And by working with those wraparound services, we have landlords willing to work with us, willing to give them a chance because they're working with us. So it's called Hope for Home. And most of our referrals will either come from St. John's if they don't qualify for rapid rehousing, or from Dana Pensiony from the school system. So we're really trying to get this going to help those families. The idea is at the end of the year, what is it that got them in that situation? Is it not doing a budget? Is it letting someone live with them, violating those rules? Whatever it was, give them those wraparound services that clients in rapid rehousing get. With that backbone, oh, you're tired, Lowe's, oh, you need help with a little bit of money. We don't highlight that part to them. But we have a pot of money, because if they know we have it, then they're gonna need it. So that's an initiative we created together. We got a very small pot. We're trying to work on getting a bigger pot. But in the meantime, just to get some data behind, because he's strong, as Kelli shared, she has some people that have been in her program for over 20 years. So, yes. No? Okay. With that, in your packet, you will see 2 things I want to share. This is a year old because we're having our Homeless Coalition meeting this Thursday. So Dana Pensiony gives us how many homeless school-age children are in Washington County. Yes?
No package.
We don't have copy of it.
Okay, well, when you leave, you get a packet. I'm not going through the whole thing, and if we run out of colored ones, we will email it. But when you look at this later, every school, thank you, Kelli, every school in Washington County, last year there was 1 school that had 0, the year before it was 1 school that had 0. It is not Smithsburg, it is not Old Forge. Every school in Washington County has homeless children in the school system. So this was a thing that Dana helped us put together over the year by year, and you will see a dramatic increase. Now, I will caution you that last number was the year-to-date as of November. The other piece is to show you that at the end of the school year last year, there had been 925 homeless school-age children in Washington County. They're not homeless at once. If they're homeless at least 1 day during the school year, they get those supports. So I really like when Dana gives us this report at the end of the month in September, October, because it really gives us a snapshot. Okay, there might be 300 and something homeless families.
So something really important to understand. A moment ago, I tried to very briefly walk you through the difference in the definition of homelessness. So again, if you are 25 or older, in order to be considered homeless, you are on the street, living in a car, or in a shelter. Those are the three
For
primary.
12 solid months. Like it
Yes.
can't just be 30 days, it can't be a week, it can't be 8 months. It has to be 12 solid months, or in 3 years, they have to have 3 times of 4 months. That's up to 12 months. But it's crazy. So people that have, you know, they lost their income and they're on the street for very briefly, we can't help.
So it's important to remember, thank you, Kelly.
I'm
It's
sorry.
important- No, you're fine. It's important to remember that when we talk about children, so when you look at these numbers that you guys now have your packets, or you look at, or you hear this, that there are 900 homeless children in Washington County, it's not the same definition. Because they're children, couch surfing, for example, what we would call couch surfing, qualifies as homelessness for a child. So if you have a child, for example, or a family that's staying with someone in their home, but that's not their permanent address, are you guys with me? That's the preacher in me. Are you guys with me? All right. If that's not their permanent address, because of the children involved, they are considered homeless. Does that make sense to everyone? So again, it's nuanced and there are varying definitions primarily based on age. But I know it's confusing that when you see this and go, well, wait a minute, you said there were 280, two people on the list for homelessness and there's 900 homeless children in Washington County, the math isn't mathing on that. That's why. It's the difference of the definition of homelessness based on age. Yes, ma'am.
What, do you have any statistics or any programs that are particularly targeted towards homeless college students? Because my understanding from the Dean of Student Services is that HCC has a shocking number of homeless students.
Wow.
So they would qualify for the same programs that nothing specific. The easiest answer is nothing specific for college students. But depending on their age, if they're under 25, then there's, I would say, less used resources for them. And so I would encourage them to come to one of those entry points like we just talked about, because there are youth shelters, there are additional dollars in HSP for young people under 25. So we encourage them. And I've met with HCC a few months ago and encouraged them to do that as well.
Good.
Yeah. Am I calling on people? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Kelli.
Okay.
Kelli, did I correctly understand that your clients will come to us with a form that we sign, like a pledge sheet, as like in the olden days when they came?
Possibly.
So our staff should be alerted to the fact that that could happen, correct?
Yes, however, they should be working with a case manager. So if you do get that knock on your door, it would be best to find out if they're working with CAC or Potomac Case Management or Horizon Goodwill, and they have someone, because, I didn't mention that, that's a big part of the grant, is that this cannot come from, I cannot have a consumer knocking on my door. It's for someone else to do for them. They do not fill it out, they do not sign it. The grant is for a case manager or a doctor or a therapist to fill this out for them. Sorry, that's the ramifications. It also keeps, just things from getting all clogged up. Because they don't understand it as well, but it is something, if, say a case manager calls your church and says, would you all pledge, then you would create the pledge letter, or just to send me an email. I could use an email as a pledge letter too. But I also have a pledge letter, Reach has a pledge letter, and that's to let the landlord know, hey, we are working on this. When the full amount is gathered, we will all pay. None of us pay until the full amount is gathered, because that's just throwing money away sometimes. We have to know if they're looking for $1,200, Reach has pledged $400, and I'm pledging $800. Okay, that $1,200 has been met, we're all gonna pay it now. But the consumer does not understand that. I've had so many call me and get so upset because they don't understand how this is working. So I think the grant now has been created so that it's not for them to do, it's for case management to do, or their doctor.
So again, the best thing you can do is refer to the entry point or ask them if they have a mental health provider to talk to their doctor about consumer support funds.
Kathy, you had a question?
Yeah, I was hoping you guys could speak to the new city ordinance about not sleeping in public places.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll turn it over to Chief in just a second. One thing I would like to say is that, again, we are often moved by what we see. And most of the time, when we see something, we attribute a cause or definition based on other things that we've heard. When you live, work in the city of Hagerstown, it is tempting to think that what we see often on the street is always representative of homelessness. And it's not. Often what we see on the street is representative of active addiction, is representative of mental health issues, or other very complex issues. And so I think that's probably a good lead-in for Chief and the Mayor to talk about the ordinance, is that not everything that looks like homelessness is homelessness. There may be people that you look at and we judge them, right? We look at them, we see them, and we go, oh, that person is, I don't know, walking down the street, or they're hanging out on the corner or whatever, and they don't, by our standard, they don't look clean, or they don't look, however we judge folks, right? And we assume that they're homeless. Oftentimes, that is not the case. Not never, for sure, to use a double negative, but oftentimes, not the case. Doug?
So I just want to ask a quick clarifying question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the couch surfing child.
Yes.
How about the couch surfing adults who were
Not
or
homeless.
families who are on the edge of
Not
homelessness?
homeless.
Not considered homeless.
So
Not
sad.
considered homeless.
So
I don't know if I just.
Sure.
I don't have this as a fact, so if the head of household is over age of 25, then they don't count as homeless. I suspect, and I don't know, and forgive me on the kids, that is in place so HUD can say they're resolving homelessness. So if you don't count this population, because why else would that be a nuance, or escaping domestic violence, right? They can say they're resolving homelessness if they're not counting these populations.
And I do think there's something to be said for, we often conflate homelessness and shelter. And so even if you are older, right, I think HUD does, I think you're right, I just don't think it's necessarily the sum total. HUD is saying you have shelter if you are 30 years old and you're couch surfing in someone else's permanent address. That again, you're not on the street, you're not in a shelter, you're not in a car. And so I do think there is some merit to that, and all of us who have been in or around government know that the particularly difficult part of governing, right, is parsing out the definitions and where do you draw the line, right? Because if we said as a society, for example, sociology professor, so if we said as a society, for example, anyone without a permanent address is homeless, there's not enough funds anyway, right, to be able to meet that need. We have things like issues in our area and other areas in the United States with affordability of housing. We have issues with families and folks who have an eviction on their record. So I can tell you that there are people who come into CAC and they are eligible for our program. We have money there for them to help them, but they have an eviction on their record and no property manager, landlord wants to rent to them. And we can't force any property manager or landlord to rent to anyone. And because of that eviction, it makes it incredibly difficult for them to find a place to live. And that's one of the reasons Jeannie spoke about Hope for Home earlier. That's one of the reasons why we created that program, to try to find property managers and landlords that would be able to, and willing to give people a second, sometimes, in some cases, a third or more chance. But it is a very difficult issue. You guys want to speak to the ordinance, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. First, I'd like to make a pitch. I always need somebody to do invocation last Tuesday of every month at my city council meeting. Pastor Mac has been so gracious to do it many times for myself, so please reach out to me on my mayor email to volunteer for this, please. I try not to have it me or the council do it. I try to get somebody to come in as a guest to do it. So, Tim's right. We take a lot of heat. My gosh, I get ridiculed for what I wear.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. The day we put a post out about the ordinance, this thing blew up statewide. I was taking all kinds of heat. I'm sure Chief was too. That morning, I was heading to Washington D.C. to the White House as well as the Senate to advocate for federal funding for this. I mean, actually, we had all kinds of city representatives asking for funding for everything, but that was what I was geared towards, was the unhoused condition issue we had here in Hagerstown. And actually it worked because the following day, there was an executive order signed that's going to redirect federal funding. So we're working on that right now, and also opioid settlement funding as well. There are things we're doing, but I wanted to dispel, which I did 2 weeks ago with Chief's help at City Council meeting. We had people in talking, and it was during citizen comments saying that we were criminalizing homelessness. That is absolutely far from the truth. Nowhere in that ordinance does it criminalize homelessness. It just makes it illegal to sleep on public property or city-owned property. I wanted to dispel that motion right there. Chief has a lot of stats that he's going to share with you just in a second, but we are working with the Hagerstown Housing Authority to create a lot of low-income housing right now, and it's happening. But when you take heat, on the flip side, then people say, well, you have too much. People say you don't have enough. So these are the kind of things that we face all the time, and it drives the decisions that we make. And we're just going to try for the betterment of the city. That's every time we go in on a council meeting on Tuesdays, and actually every day we work on issues like this. Chief has some great stats on this, and actually one other thing, we have finally created, and Tim was a part of it, Jeannie was a part of it, dialogue once a month now with county commissioners, with state representatives. We had Senator Boardman, we had Delegate Schindler, the Washington County Health Department, everybody, Dr. Soline was there. So we had so many people there that we're now finally coming together to discuss issues and how to solve this together instead of always being divisive. This is a city issue or this is a county issue. Now we're coming together and we're at least speaking on this. But I want to turn this over to Chief. He has some statistics. Statistics. August 8th is when this thing went into effect, and we're a month in now. So he has some statistics that I'd like to share.
Good afternoon. So I know statistics are boring, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of that, but I'll give you a couple of highlights. And these data points that we're collecting did as part of the council's request to kind of prove that we weren't trying to criminalize homelessness, to prove that in our actions. So to clarify, nowhere in the ordinance does it mention the word homeless. Nowhere. The word homeless is nowhere in that ordinance anywhere. And majority of the people, a very large portion of the people that we come in contact with are not homeless. So for what we've done over the last month, we've collected some data. Sorry, put my old man glasses on. So we had an equal distribution of enforcement activity. When I say that, we proactively and reactively responded to these individuals equally. So 50% we found ourselves, and 50% we got calls for service. And also equal distribution from privately owned and public property. So half are on private property, half are on public property. So we had, I'm trying to scroll through here. So, of the people that we contacted, both public and private, 70% informed us that they had been offered services prior to us ever being out with them, for whatever their issues were. Of those people that were notified of that, 81% are not engaged in services. So 70% of them have been offered services by whoever, providing either through the sole resources or through law enforcement prior to our engagement with them, and 81% said they are not taking active involvement with those resources. So they're choosing not to do that. As you would probably be aware, 94% are classified as unemployed. Living situations. So we broke it down for choose to live outside, homeless without conflict, or homeless and no place to go. So homeless with no place to go was half. Half of those people had no place to go. The other half had either conflict, which forced them not to be where they could be, or they were just choosing not to be where they could be. So of that, 50% of what we contacted were truly homeless. The other ones had options and didn't want to take for whatever those variety of reasons, as Tim pointed out. 75% were residents of Washington County or Hagerstown. The other ones were not, and they were from Tennessee, Philadelphia, variety of other places, not just Frederick or otherwise. They were quite a distance away. Of the observations, and I had my guys do an observational challenge on this. CDS, drug addiction or use of CDS, 30%. Non-reported, we couldn't determine, were 67%. And then the mental health, they were around 7% that we could observe and could be comfortable in saying that we think there was a mental health issue that was causing that. So their outcomes, no one has been arrested or charged of all of our contacts, not for the ordinance. We've moved along 44%, moved along and made them aware of the ordinance, 44%. Somewhere, say, half or 44% knew about the ordinance and we moved them along, they already knew about it. The other half were told about the ordinance and they moved along. We made one arrest on a warrant, they had a warrant out for the arrest. And we had one arrest for a drug-related charge. It wasn't related to the ordinance itself. So 0 ordinances, arrests on that. So I bring those to your attention because people that have come to city council for all good reasons, that are afraid that we are just trying to lock up this problem. I have said repeatedly, I'll say again in this group, making arrests is not going to solve this problem. It's just like the drug wars. Drugs don't solve it. Lock people up for doing drugs doesn't solve the problem. We've proven that since the 1980s. Now, with that being said, free will doesn't and shouldn't impose upon the general public their fear and safety as well. So there still has to be some accountability. We put this in place to hold that accountability there, but also to try to push for voluntary compliance, which I can prove with just this last month we received voluntary compliance. I know that Jeannie spoke to, they're seeing an uptick of people coming in and wanting resources out of fear, and that might be a side effect of what happened, that they might get in trouble on this ordinance. That's not a bad thing. So sometimes you have to have the carrot needs to be out there, which is what they represent. And the stick is on my side, the fear of that. How many people would go out and speed and drive as fast as you want to if you didn't have to worry about getting locked up or charged with a speeding ticket? A lot of people, right? So we have that in place to try to hold that voluntary compliance to drive within the speed limit. This is very similar to that. So at no time, and I've said, I was on the CAC's board for 10 years. Had to come off based on the rules. So I was on the board for CAC for 10 years. I'm on the board for Lasting Change, which is a women's addictions unit. I've been on that for about 12 years. So I've been actively involved in the Homeless Coalition for 15 years. So I don't bring this ordinance to play because I just think we just need to lock people up. That's just absolutely not in my nature, and it's not what we want. we approached putting this ordinance in place back in 2018. My guys came to me because the problem wasn't near as bad as it was now, but we were seeing some of these issues going up, and the community was asking for us to do things that we didn't have any legal right to do to help them out. So we couldn't do anything then. The Supreme Court said back then, public place, you have the right to be there, nothing we can do about it. And it wasn't until the Oregon case, the Supreme Court just ruled one about a year ago, that changed that rule and gives jurisdictions the ability to create ordinances like we have. So, my take is this. If we did put this ordinance in place and people started setting up tent cities on public land, on sidewalks that were wide enough that they could do that without blocking free passage of people walking by, what would this community say about that? What would the community say? And then we put an ordinance in place after that's already in play, right? You don't have those 10 cities up, and then we have to do what San Francisco and California has done, which is then go out and tear all those down and displace those people on camera. What would be the bigger image, the harder image to deal with? Or try to help them now before we have that issue. Last thing, I'm gonna point this out. Any of you live where you live, if there's a public sidewalk in front of your house, and someone's sleeping with their stuff right outside your house, beside your porch stoop, we're not blocking free passage, not causing another crime. If we didn't have this ordinance, and you start deciding, you get a call from your wife and your kids, there's some guy sleeping outside our porch, and you won't get up and leave. And you go, I'll be right home. And you show up at the house. You go, sir, you can't let yours come. This is my house, you gotta leave. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm sleeping right here. And he called us. We showed up, sir, you're gonna have to move. I'm not going anywhere. There would be nothing we could do. Nothing. The law did not provide us to do anything in that situation. How do you think you and your family would feel? Do you think they'd be safe wanting to walk out of that house at any given time? No. Not that that guy might do anything. It's not the point of, is he criminal, is he gonna hurt anybody? But that impedes upon your living arrangement and your wife's living arrangement. So there's gotta be some accountability in that sense. In this case, sir, you either move or we can cite you for this. Now I have a legal authority to make you move, and we can get voluntary compliance.
Also,
So-
Chief, don't you think too, in that scenario, that you, HPD being a resource that can be called, by the dad, the father, come home, you're also reducing the, escalation.
Yes.
Between that father and home.
Yes.
Right, and so you can address that rather than the private citizen addressing that, and hopefully reduce, because we have had instances of private citizens, engaging and escalating with folks.
Very aggressively.
Yes, in those same situations. So it's not just the safety of the homeowner.
Right.
Or the business owner, but also the safety of that individual on the sidewalk as well.
So, a very good point, that's very, very true. So, I use that example because that's something I think we all can sit here and think about. And that wouldn't be something that anyone would want to have to go to work and leave your wife and your children at home with someone sleeping right outside your porch. And then having the cops say, you can't do anything about it. That's right to be there. So that's an extreme example. And 10 cities are extreme examples and all those things. So when we presented this ordinance back in December, when we first came to the council about it, it took us 5 months to get that approved and through with like multiple discussions. Since that January time till today, one person would have been affected by this. One. We had a call for a gentleman who was sleeping on the sidewalk 8 times in the same day, and we could not move him along. Didn't have an ordinance in place doing about it. He refused to leave, and 8 different calls coming in from the police saying, this guy needs to move, what are you doing, why are you not doing anything? And our guys were showing up to try to get this guy to move on. One person.
How many interactions do you have so far since? I'm trying to get a, show them the.
16 times we've been out with 16 individuals in the last month. Again, not these big numbers that everyone thought we were going to be out here trying to target homeless people. 16 people who we're talking about these numbers. So maybe the percentages, low sample size, so it's not really, the percentages aren't really valid in that sense, but just to give you an example of what that looks like, 16 people that we've been out with. And half of those were Someone calling us saying we want something done, can you do something about this person? The other ones we just happen across for whatever variety of different reasons that we come across them. So I want to reassure you guys and your congregations and people that you guys are with, we are not targeting homeless people. I don't have time to target homeless people. The other thing that I don't have the ability to do is lock them up and put them into the county jail, because guess what? There is no space in the county jail for them to be. They're already overwhelmed in the county jail. So that's not the point of this. The point of this is to get voluntary compliance to have that. And I'll end on one last thing. So, as Tim and everyone up here said, we've been working really hard on a variety of different things to try to come up with solutions. And this is a really, really hard, difficult thing to come up with a solution. No one in the country's figured it out. No one. And the causes of this homeless issue is vast and varying, so there's no real easy fix there either. It's not drugs, it's not mental health, it's not, there's a variety of reasons for that for everybody. So it doesn't fit a nice simple mold. But I will say that we work collaboratively to try to work on solutions. I approached the Homeless Coalition well before December and told them my idea about this ordinance, because I wanted them to hear it from me and have that discussion with them first. They're seeing it and feeling it too, because the clientele has changed in what they're dealing with, in the sense that their safety and security has been in question as well. So they're looking for help from us as well from that, which is different. It's changed in the last 5 years. Again, no real rhyme or reason for it. So we're working on different things. I'm working with Judge Loadley in District Court. We're trying to put together, we are putting together, we're trying, it's going to be called Community Care Court. It's a beta tested court, it's not an official court. And then all the low level offenses that we can deal with people that may be in this population or outside this population, whether it's aggressive panhandling, we cite them at charge, we can offer them to be in the Community Care Court program. What that does is they get the charge, it might just be a citation, and then they go right to a case management team, and then they can be in court in a week in front of Judge Logan. And they'll come in, and we start the process of the resource part of it, and the charge that they have gets put on hold. And kind of lets the judge be the parental guidance for them. Somebody they can look to and say, I want to make her proud of me for doing well. She's going to approach it that way. Officers don't come in. They're not coming in to testify about the case or what the charge was, because they're agreeing to do this. We simply put that charge on hold, and they go through the process and work with the community resources on whatever their issues are, whether it's housing or job placement or whatever. And then, as they continue to work through this, even if they falter at times, as long as they're still working through the community care part of it, we keep working with them. The goal is to minimize the interactions we have. So if we're not getting more calls, because you guys aren't calling saying, hey, I can deal with this person that's bugging me when I try to go into the store asking for cigarettes or money, and they won't let me alone. You know, that I'm scared of. That's a win for the community. At the same time, we're helping them. We use the stick, which is the charge of the court system, to give them the carrot and then kind of hold that for them, give them a little incentive to do that. If they choose to not be in the program, if they choose to say, I don't want to do this anymore, then the judge can say, I'm going to push your charge over into the regular court system and go to court for that charge for whatever that be. We've seen this model before. We went down to Sarasota, Florida, and saw this model 2 years ago. Didn't know it existed. We went down to see their team and their outreach team from the police department. Like what they did there, we're doing some of those things we saw there. But we saw this court system we knew nothing about, and all of us fell in love with the court system. It was a great idea. So luckily, I have a judge, Judge Loadley, in the district court that is passionate and wants to do this. She had to beg her bosses to beta test this court process, because it takes about 2 years to get a specialty court involved in the state of Maryland. And we can do this with no cost. I don't need to hire anyone differently to do it. The court doesn't have to hire anybody differently for it. We manage it, and the judge can say, ma'am, you were in here today, I want to see you next week. You know, and she can set that based on what the team would say is the recommendation, maybe to have that more engaged thing. And what we know from everybody up here, the more we can have involvement with the individuals that we're trying to help on a routine basis, the better chance they have of succeeding. they're busy, just like everybody else. And they may see someone once a month, if that's what they've got time, their time in their schedule for case management. But if they do it more, if they could do it more, they would. This is gonna give us the opportunity to do that with some of these individuals for whatever those reasons are. So there are other things we're trying to do. I got beat up over a year ago trying to bring a tiny home village concept to the council. Community just lambasted me saying that I was letting drug users live in a home and I wasn't gonna kick them out, and there's an ordinance that says you have to kick them out. That's not what I said. But we went down that path. I will still fight for a tiny village home. I talked to the mayor about wanting to do this, talked to my boss about that. I still think it's an idea we need to pursue. And it's something that we can kind of control, in the sense that if we come up with the funding and put it in place, Tim and CAC has already agreed when we met with them to be the lead agency to kind of oversee that case management side, along with the health department. It would be a program, but it's a place for people to live, at least for up to a year, what we were talking about doing, so, yes.
Is that based in the Salisbury model?
Kind of.
Tiny villages?
Kind of. We went and saw Salisbury's, but there's nationwide programs out there. We went and saw Salisbury's because they were kind of feeling their way through when they built theirs, and we saw what they did and the hurdles they had and the mistakes they were making along the way, so we figured out how to avoid those if we could. So I have worked with the Hagerstown Housing Authority, and I've got them to agree to sell us one of the courts in Home Village, the city, for $1. They would sell us the court for $1. We literally have to buy the homes. The infrastructure for water and electric and stuff are already there because those homes are already torn down. And we put the tiny village in there, and we gate it off. So it's a gated community, which is the safety of the people who live there, not for the other way around. And then we make it a programmatic situation and not a housing situation, so that we can get around all the other HUD issues and all the other reasons we're talking about up here. We're trying to find ways to navigate around that so that we don't have to live within the federal rules, the state rules, that we can use it as a program. So that's the genius of working in partnerships, that we're like, they know how this thing works. And I go, well, how can we make it work differently? Well, you did it this way, and then we call it compliance.
Is that still a live possibility? I know it hit resistance, but where does that stand right now?
I know the city council's back. This city council is interested in that concept. Now it comes down to funding. We're looking at funding sources. The counties, we're engaging them because they have funding coming in through marijuana funding, which specifically goes towards homelessness. Is one of the criteria to spend that marijuana tax money. So if we get some of the marijuana tax money that comes to the county to fund into this, we could make this happen.
So I'm sorry, I know there's other questions, just fine. So that's for serving the homeless population in Tiny Village.
That would be primarily for the homeless, yes, primarily for the homeless with other issues where they got it.
So I have more, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, she's been pretty popular. We're over time, but we've got 2 more quick questions before we.
Can I bring us back to the ordinance? Are
Yes.
you equipping your officers with the available resources so that when they're going out and encountering these people, that they are able to counsel them and offer them? Because I think people seeing the approach that you're taking is gonna make a big difference on how people react to this ordinance and the intention of this ordinance, rather than it being just another effort to have a police state or something like that.
The answer is yes. We have shift level, what are called community resource officers. They've had specialty training. A lot of them already work with the community partners that we have, so they already have intimate knowledge. So when they hear one of the other officers go out with them, we have a pretty new officer rank, so a lot of them aren't as familiar with the resources, but they have the resource guides, so they all have that. But they can call one of the resource officers to come and assist with that reference or information. I know we put out a press thing after we got the ordinance enacted about Ashley Roush, our community liaison coordinator. Unfortunately, shortly after that, she got deployed on a FEMA deployment in Texas for 2 months. She just got back last week. So Ashley's actively on the street all the time, working with all the variety of different populations of people we talk about here today. She comes out with the officers, she engages with them, she works long-term solutions and works with the partners to try to do that liaison with that. So, but yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, one more.
Last one. What do you think we as church leaders can do to help?
Yes.
One thing I'm gonna ask you guys to go back to your, listen, everyone wants to help. A lot of people want to help, most people want to help. All right, and Kathy can talk, we can talk about this, I'm sure many of you heard this in other park meetings years ago, when helping HARCs. Don't give directly to the people you see on the street. Give to the organizations, give to the places that have these resources, because if you have them go to where the resources are, now there's a chance for engagement with the people that can help them. If you give them something directly on the street, then no one can go get the help, nothing happens. You feel good, but you haven't really helped that person ultimately beyond that moment. So that's my biggest thing I can tell people is, take your big heart and put the money where it needs to go into the resources that are struggling for funding, that unrestricted funding that you use in a different way than with the state grant funding that they get, because they're always restricted.
Let me say real quick to that, I would say two things. One, homeless does not mean worthless.
Amen.
Homeless now.
Does not mean
Worthless.
worthless. Homeless is not worthless. Nor are any of the folks that we see on the spectrum of struggle, right, in our city or in our community. In Christianity, at least, Jesus taught that the poor you would have with you always, but he also taught us that to do unto the least of, as society defines least, is to do it unto him which makes them equal to, right? And so that there is an equality in how we are to treat each person as intrinsically built into their existence. I say that to answer your question. Whatever you are led to do to help, in whatever area you might be led to do it in the faith sector, in the faith community, be educated, be plugged into an organization that understands it, because understanding it and knowing it, again, we've talked about all these nuances, is so key. And make sure that what you do in accordance with that, as Chief said, right? Because there are organizations. The last thing that Hagerstown or Washington County needs is another nonprofit. That's the truth. And I get an amen. Can I get an amen anywhere in the room? We've got a lot. And what we need to remember is this is not an us versus them issue. This is an us issue based on equality, right? And how we treat one another. And the best way that we are going to continue to help bend the bar back of this issue is for us to work together. And that is the faith-based community, working with the nonprofit community, working with the government community, working with the private community. That is the best way to push that bar back.
Thank you so much. And I know you had a question too. I don't know.
It's just real quick.
Is it real quick?
I'm just trying to understand the ordinance. If, like in the wintertime, you see people sleeping on the church steps or out in the woods, they haven't been able to get into a shelter or get help. Is that a person that will be fined because they're in the city? Just trying to understand.
No, it has to be city-owned property. What you're talking about is private property. So unless the woods are just city-owned property, the church stuff would be a private property. That's not, that's a whole
What about the
other-
park?
The park?
Yeah.
The park would be, we have ordinances for the park already, so after, at dusk, you can't be in the park anyway, so there's already ordinance that covers some of those situations. But if we had 30 people show up with tents and set them up in the city park in the middle of the day, we could make them leave. We could make them tear those tents down and move on.
Okay, if anybody else has any questions, I'm sure Chief will stay a little bit longer to answer them. So thank you so much to everybody, to Jeannie, to Chief, and to Bill for coming and being part of this. Appreciate your support. We will support you in tiny homes too. Tell us what you want us to do.
Yes.
So thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Les to give us our closing prayer. And thank you for your patience. I think it was important that we gave a little extra time so that we could fully give these folks the time they needed.
Let's get a pat in hand as well. Get on out here, every head bowed. Dear Heavenly Gracious Father, we come to you and we say thank you for your power, your wisdom, and your knowledge. We thank God for all of the collaborative efforts that are here today, one by one and name by name, from HARC to REACH to CAC to the mayor, as well as our police chief, and everybody that is involved here today. We see the reason, but God, we leave with a place of resolution, and a resolution to come together in a great collaboration to make things go well. So God, as we leave this place, whenever your presence, allow your Holy Spirit to dwell with us as we leave and come back in the right place we have. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, we pray. Let us all say amen.